Hey, how y'all doing? This is Mongo Slade, and today we're going to talk about Bret Hart going in on Jake the Snake Roberts. So, get in the Wayback Machine. You got to go way, way back. A couple of months ago, Jake Roberts came out and said that Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart were the two worst drawing WWF champions. They were too small to be champion, and that they were just two guys arguing over pussy. Basically, they both was arguing over Sonny. He made this comment on a podcast. It was several months ago, probably around the time. Oh shit, I think it was before the pandemic. As a matter of fact, I'm almost certain it was before the pandemic. It was that long ago. I did a video on it. I will put that in the description for people who didn't hear it. Of course, we disagreed. Kevin Nash was the lowest drawing WWF champion of all time, but Bret Hart apparently must have just found out about it, and oh boy, he went in on Jake Roberts. I love Bret. I do. He's a bitter old man. He don't give a fuck. So Wrestling Inc. got the transcription of whatever Bret was talking about. So I'm just going to read what Bret says. He says Jake Roberts is one of those guys who a few months ago said something about, he made a stupid comment about the two worst champions that ever were Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, and he made some reference that we didn't draw, which is always, I don't know if you want to think any of the WrestleMania 12, you can't tell me if you look at the crowd that I didn't draw. I mean, it was huge buy rates, and it was a packed arena, even Wembley Stadium with the British Bulldog was over 80,000 fans there. And to try to throw out, hey, you never drew. I wrestled in front of 100,000 people in India for WWE in 1994. We drew. But maybe in the United States, you could argue that I didn't draw in the way Hulk Hogan drew. But I mean, who did? Who drew like Hulk Hogan did? It was a phenomenon in 1984 when WrestleMania had the whole sort of rebirth of pro wrestling happen, and the numbers that happened at the time were unprecedented. Okay, so this is a good rebuttal. Of course, you could say that Bulldog maybe drew that Wembley Stadium match. I guess you could give Davey that number, but of course, Bret also did really well in other countries like Germany and like he mentioned India. And he was really, I think he did pretty decent in Japan and Canada, of course, and Mexico and stuff like that. So maybe he wasn't that interesting in the United States, but he did well in other countries. That's kind of always been the Bret Hart thing, is that he didn't draw in the States, he drew internationally, and so Vince kind of just ran with that as far as international. But he was awesome. Bret's awesome. Bret continues about Jake. I think it bothers me that someone like Jake, who never went to the gym, if he did go to the gym, he might do a set and then go smoke a cigarette outside. He was not a tough guy, was not a legit athlete. He was strictly a promo. And he was a great worker, a great pretend wrestler. But all I know is that when my time came and they picked me to be champion, they chose me for whatever reasons. I'm very happy that they chose me. I think it was a good choice. I certainly worked hard enough to get the opportunity. But Jake said something like we were too small and we were never drew big numbers or anything like that. But I say in response to that, where was Jake Roberts? Like, why didn't Jake Roberts take the torch? Why wasn't he there? Okay, so that was brutal. Now, for those of you who might not understand, Bret has a background. So Bret is legit. So and yeah, it's not obviously Jake Roberts has told his story 100 times that he really just got into the business despite his dad. His dad basically said he was too. His dad, Grizzly Smith. I guess they're going to do a Dark Side of the Ring on the Smith family, which is going to be Grizzly Smith and Rockin' Robin and Sam Houston. Even though all three of them were in WWE at the same time, they were not allowed to be referenced to be related, and that was at the request of Jake Roberts and Rockin' Robin. Rockin' Robin didn't want anybody to know that she was Jake Snake Roberts' sister, and Jake Snake Roberts didn't want anything to do with Rockin' Robin and Sam Houston. So, but basically, he just got into the business because his dad said he was too small and all that type of stuff. So he wanted to show up his dad, but he didn't really have a amateur background at all. While Bret did. Bret went and wrestled in high school and stuff like that. Plus, Stu wasn't going to let him go into business without have a background. But this is a good point right here when he asks, where was Jake Roberts? Because we already know what happened to Jake Roberts. We all know what happened. Jake was stoned and he took a walk. He took a fucking walk. That's what happened. He got the hell out of there. Okay, so he continues about Jake Roberts. He says, Jake Roberts is one of those guys who never passed the torch to anybody. He never made anybody but himself. So where was Jake Roberts when guys like me or Sean needed somebody to pass the torch like Roddy Piper did for me? Why was Jake Roberts never there for anyone else? He was only there for himself. Wow. And that's a good point. That is a very good point. Because in 1992 when Jake left? WrestleMania 8 was in 1992. That was the year Bret beat Roddy Piper. But, and we're going to get into this, Jake did help Undertaker. Now, Bret's going to be wrong here. I shouldn't be priming people, but I'm going to say this. Here he goes. Roberts was a sneaky kind of guy in the ring, Hart divulged. Robert was supposed to put over Undertaker at WrestleMania. I think it was WrestleMania 8 in Indianapolis. And Roberts called something inaudible in the match and had Undertaker do the finish on the floor. Undertaker didn't know what to do. He was still kind of green in those days. And he was listening and trusting Jake. And Jake ended up counted out on the floor so he wouldn't have to actually go in the ring and put Undertaker over. And then Roberts was fired. He was fired from the company. Okay, this is wrong. I fully believe that the tombstone did take place on the floor, but he was pinned. And then Roberts has also talked about this, that he wanted to leave the WWE, and that he pulled basically he pulled an Ultimate Warrior, and that he told Vince that he was either going to release him from his contract or he was going to not perform at WrestleMania 8. Jake Roberts has told this story before. He said that he, according to Jake, he wanted to be a producer. I don't know how old Jake was in 1992. I couldn't tell you. But apparently he wanted to be in the backstage producer. And this was around the time that I think the Ring Boy scandal or something like that was going on. And Pat Patterson was gone. And then, Jake wanted Pat Patterson's spot on creative or whatever Pat Patterson was doing. Jake wanted that spot. But Vince and Bruce and all of them was basically like, nah. Well, I don't think Bruce was there because I don't think Bruce was there for WrestleMania 8. But Vince was just kind of like, nah, we're not going to fill Pat's seat. And then Jake kind of got pissed and decided he wanted to leave. And so then he told Vince, essentially, let me out of my contract or I'm not going to go. And then Vince let him out of his contract. He went and performed, did the job, and then left. That's Jake's version of this story. I don't know how true that is, but Jake doesn't have a reason to lie. Okay. So let's continue. He says, I don't know who was going to carry the torch if it wasn't me or Sean. At least when we were hard workers. I disagree completely that we were the two worst champions of all time. I think you would be hard pressed to find two better pro wrestlers. We were at the top of the pile. Sean or me never had to take the back seat to Hulk Hogan or Ultimate Warrior or whoever Jake thinks are the real iconic world champions. That's because everybody was gone, Bret. That's why everybody was good. Everybody was gone, baby. 92 was ugly. 92 was an ugly time because they brought WrestleMania 8 was the return of the Ultimate Warrior. He was gone by SummerSlam. Jake Roberts was gone. Hogan was still there, but Hogan wasn't participating. Let's put it like that. Hogan main evented WrestleMania 8, and I don't remember what else he did in 1992. If we're being honest, what was he? I think he wrestled at SummerSlam 92. I think because he no, he didn't WrestleMania SummerSlam 92, because SummerSlam 92 the main event was Bulldog and Bret. And then the co-main event was Savage and Warrior. And I don't think Hogan participated on that show at all. So, yeah, because Hogan took some time off during this whole ordeal, I believe. So, yeah, he's right. And then by the time Shawn was the champion, Hogan was gone. So, yeah. But Bret continues. if you look at pro wrestling today and how the athleticism is such a big part of it in the style of wrestling, that's not a throwback to Hulk Hogan. That's not a throwback to Jake Roberts. That's not a throwback to the Ultimate Warrior or any of those guys. That's a throwback to Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. Roberts was dead wrong about that. And you know what? That's absolutely true. There's so many guys now whose favorite wrestlers are Shawn Michaels that it's kind of crazy. And I thought maybe, a lot of people are like, oh, that's WWE propaganda. Like, no, I've seen a lot of wrestlers on Twitter. They have like Shawn Michaels matches memorized. It's crazy. It's like it's an insane thing. I too thought it was WWE propaganda, but it's not. It's not. It's real. Shawn is like legit this generation's Ric Flair. Like how everybody from Shawn's generation looked up to Ric Flair and kind of modeled him. That's kind of how people are with Shawn now. And it's like legit people who never worked there in WWE who wouldn't have fall under the sway of the propaganda or like got Shawn Michaels matches memorized. It's crazy. And I'm actually surprised at how much credit Bret is giving Shawn in this situation. Because Bret don't like Shawn. But they always like if you ever seen them do the what was it called? The face-to-face thing they did with Jim Ross, where they was talking about their beef together, and they basically agreed that the dinosaurs were a problem. And I say this all the time. The dinosaurs were essentially Paul fucking Orndorff and guys like that. Guys who kept saying that they were too small to be the champions. They agreed, the two of them, and even to today, they both still agree that those guys were a problem. That those guys were holding everybody down, and that was the Bret and Shawn thing that they kind of locked arms on that one. But then when it came down to which one was better between the two of them, or which one of them should have been the top guy between the two of them, that's kind of where things fall apart. So let's continue with him talking about Jake Roberts, because there's more. Because once Bret got started, there's more. For a guy that's clearly jealous of me and Shawn, and maybe the success we had, I've never ever said Shawn was a lousy wrestler. Even when I had whatever issues with Shawn, as an example, I could still say that he's a total pro in the ring most of the time. Other than the Montreal Screwjob, he was always a total pro. He was safe and one of the hardest workers. He's one of those most highly skilled professional wrestlers there ever was. And if you sit there all day and throw stones at pro wrestlers, but Jake Roberts has no business ever throwing stones at Shawn Michaels. Wow. Cool it, man. Cool it. No. Now, this is where the stuff gets real meaty. Jake Roberts spent a lot of time at Stampede Wrestling. Little factoid for you. Jake Roberts actually took the Junkyard Dog to Stampede Wrestling. Junkyard Dog was floundering in Mid-South at the time. I forget. I think he was Sweet Daddy Ritter at the time or something like that. Was it Sweet Daddy Ritter? And Junkyard Dog never became a great wrestler by any stretch of the imagination. I'm talking about in between the ropes. He was a great personality, great energy, great performer, but he was never really a graps dude. But to help him get better, Jake Roberts took him to Stampede Wrestling. For those that don't know, and you probably should, Stampede Wrestling was owned by Stu Hart, who was the father of Bret Hart. So he knows Jake Roberts pretty well. And now he's going to tell some Stampede stories about Jake Roberts. This is great shit. He said, Jake lived with me, and I remember he said to me, I can't take my stereo with me. He sold me a big stereo with speakers, turntables, amp, all that. He said, I'd do him a favor if he could sell it to me. So he sold it to me for, I think, $1,500. And I remember that day I was leaving Edmonton, Canada, and he was supposed to be leaving that day. And I had been waiting around, and they came to pick me up about 4:30, and he was still there. And he goes, I'll still be a little while. I just have to pack up a bunch of stuff. Just leave me the key, and I will leave it under the mat. So I left him my house key. By the time I got home, he had stolen the stereo that he just sold me for $1,500. Holy shit. He has stolen the stereo he sold me for $1,500. I never got my money back, but he totally ripped me off on that. Plus, he phoned every promoter in the country or in the territory And in the world, in Japan, he ran up about $2,000 phone bill on me. Roberts never paid any of that. Wow. Bret, man. Bret. Bret. Come on, baby. Oh my God. Oh. Whoa. Wow. This is and there's more, believe it or not. So Bret continues. I did see Jake in WWE, and I was going to punch him out because that's how pro wrestling worked in those days. I remember I just wanted to go find him in one of those dressing rooms and beat the crap out of him, which wouldn't have been very hard, but he came in such a high wave. The first time I saw Jake Roberts, the first time I laid eyes on him, he was doing promos for Vince. Vince was actually there watching the promos and giving him direction. And Vince was just loving it. He was like, you should see this guy. He's unbelievable. He's unbelievable, pal. And he was a great talker. He was a great car salesman. He could sell you a car. And Vince was in love with him. Like, he went straight to the top with the snake and the whole thing. And I remember going like, I'm nobody at the time. I didn't have enough of a position to go beat up who they thought was their new superstar. And he was a star for a long time. I never brought it up. I never said anything to him. He never, ever paid me back or said anything. Okay. Another little history piece. Bret Hart ended up signing to the WWE in the mid 80s. So, because his father sold Stampede Wrestling events. Jake Roberts came to the WWE a little bit later on. So Bret really was on the low end of the totem pole. He really only had a job because his dad sold the company to Vince. If the Stampede, when they call it the Stampede Boys, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, Bret, the Bulldogs, all those guys probably would have got fired if it wasn't for, they were there for a long time before they actually did anything, if we're being honest. Especially Bret. He was there for a long time before they did anything with him. The Anvil spent some years in Mid-South. But those guys were under contract for a long time. And Jake Roberts did come in, who was also working in Mid-South. He had come in as a top guy because he was kind of a top guy in Mid-South when he left. But Jake got the New York thing pretty quick. And so it was pretty crazy, man. Let's continue. He says, what else did he say? It was some more shit. Let's see. Okay. He says, this is the last piece. I could just tell from the way it was done. He's talking about Beyond the Mat. Because Jake Roberts was a big piece of Beyond the Mat. So he says, I can just tell from the way it was done. There were things done in that movie that were done strictly for shock value. They were strictly theatrical. They weren't legit. They weren't honest moments. Like the part when Jake Roberts is lighting a crack pipe. And he looks at the camera and he goes, don't feel sorry for me. And then he lights the crack pipe. It's like that was all put in there for the sole reason of, please feel sorry for me. I'm lighting crack. I can't stop doing it. If you want to smoke your crack in a crack pipe, just can you do it in private and do it without them seeing you? Or can you tell them to turn off the cameras? It was all staged, which I didn't like. Okay, so now Beyond the Mat was sad as hell. Now, here's the thing. I've always said that Beyond the Mat was the precursor to the woe is me pro wrestling genre that we're stuck with now. The movie The Wrestler came out not too long after that. Actually, probably about 5 or 6 years. Well, The Wrestler came out in 2012, so maybe about 10 years. And now Dark Side of the Ring has taken up the mantle, and it's all about sad stories and people having heart attacks and dying and all this type of stuff, and everybody being poor. The Iron Sheik documentary was some of the same, but it was a comeback story in the Iron Sheik story. I love that documentary, by the way. I'm thinking about doing a review of the Iron Sheik. If y'all interested in me doing a review of the Sheik documentary, let me know in the comment section below. But this has been Bret Hart going in on Jake Roberts. I'm pretty sure there's still going to be some more, and I'm almost certain Jake Roberts is going to respond, because it doesn't seem like this is going to be a kind of thing that Jake Roberts is going to let lying down. I love this shit. Now we getting, like we get shit from the territories. We don't get a lot of new generation, that early 90s dirt. Don't get a lot of that. So, you know, it seems like Bret's going to come out with it, man. I'm all for it. Get him, Bret. Because, look, man, Jake shouldn't have said that shit. It was, the crazy thing is that both of these guys are working. You know, they're working to a little bit. Bret was completely wrong about Jake Roberts not doing the job for Undertaker. He did the job. He did the pin. He did do some bullshit in order to get there, but he got the pin. Undertaker got the pin. And Jake Roberts was wrong about Bret and Shawn being the lowest drawing champions. That was Kevin Nash. I don't see how he missed that. He was there for that. You know, at least I believe he was. He came back in Royal Rumble '96. Nash had already so maybe they were the lowest drawing champions that he had ever worked with. Because he wasn't there in '95. At least I don't believe he was. Yeah, I believe Jake Roberts came back in January of '96. So yeah, he never worked. He wasn't there when Nash was killing the business. He wasn't there. Oh, this is great shit. I love this shit. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like this video, share it, and subscribe. And I'll talk to you guys later.